The year was 2387, and space around the human colony world of New Haven looked different than usual. Instead of the normal empty darkness, over 300 alien ships filled the area like angry metal clouds. These ships belonged to the Zephyrian Empire, a race of tall reptilian creatures who had spent the last 50 years conquering other worlds across the galaxy. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human colony through the main screen. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the peaceful planet below. The Zephyrians had defeated 17 different alien races in the past, and each victory had been easier than the last. Their intelligence reports told them that humans were young and weak, having only left their home system a few decades ago. The Admiral's scaled fingers tapped against his command chair as he reviewed the battle plans. 300 ships against one small human colony should be simple work. His sensors showed only a handful of civilian transports around the planet and one military vessel. Just one single human warship standing between his mighty fleet and another easy conquest. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly looking at the tactical display. The screen showed red dots representing enemy ships, so many that they almost covered the entire display. His crew worked quietly at their stations, their faces serious but not afraid. Morrison had fought in wars before and knew that numbers alone did not always decide battles. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes checked her readings again and looked up at her captain. "Sir, I count 312 enemy vessels. Their largest ships are twice the size of our dreadnoughts back home." She paused and added quietly, "We're heavily outnumbered." Chief Engineer Bobby Clark spoke up from his station near the back of the bridge. "Captain, all systems are running normally. Power core is stable, and weapons are ready." His voice carried the calm confidence of someone who knew his ship inside and out. Weapons Officer Amy Rodriguez sat at her console, fingers moving quickly over the controls as she ran final checks on their weapon systems. "All weapon systems are green, Captain, waiting for your orders." Morrison nodded and walked closer to the main screen. The alien fleet looked impressive, filling space with their dark metal hulls and glowing engines. But the captain had seen many things in his years of service that had looked impressive at first. He activated the communications system and spoke clearly into his headset. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant to the approaching fleet. You are entering human space without permission. Turn around and leave immediately." The response came quickly from Admiral Vextar himself. The alien's voice was deep and filled with the arrogance of someone used to easy victories. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species and this colony now belong to us. You have 1 hour to evacuate all civilians from the planet and surrender your ship. Refuse and we will destroy everything." Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Hayes was studying her sensor readings. Clark was monitoring the ship's systems. Rodriguez was ready at weapons, and the rest of his people were calmly doing their jobs. These were good people who trusted him to make the right decisions. The captain activated communications again, and his reply was simple and direct. "Admiral Vextar, this is your only warning. Leave human space now or we will defend ourselves." The Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Vextar, stared at his communications officer in surprise. Other species usually responded to his ultimatums with panic or desperate attempts at negotiation. Some surrendered immediately when they saw the size of his fleet. But these humans seemed to think their single ship could fight his entire armada. "Are their sensors broken?" the Admiral asked his intelligence officer. "Do they not see how many ships we have?" The intelligence officer, a smaller Zephyrian with green-tinted scales, checked his readings carefully. "Sir, their sensors are working perfectly. They can see our entire fleet clearly. I think they actually believe they can fight us." Vextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Then they are either insane or they have some weapon we don't know about." He turned to his tactical officer. "Send Squadron 7 to destroy their ship. 12 vessels should be more than enough to handle one human warship." The 12 Zephyrian ships broke away from the main fleet and moved toward the Defiant. Each ship was larger than the human vessel and carried enough firepower to level a small city. Their crews were experienced warriors who had participated in multiple conquests. Back on the Defiant, Hayes reported the approaching enemy ships. 12 vessels breaking off from the main group, Captain. They're moving into attack formation. Morrison watched the enemy ships approach on his screen. They moved in a standard attack pattern that he recognized from military textbooks. These aliens fought like most species did, following predictable tactics and relying on superior numbers. "Bobby," the captain said to his chief engineer, "how long since we've run a full power test?" Clark smiled slightly as he understood what his captain was asking. "About 6 months, sir. All systems have been running at standard operational levels." "Amy," Morrison said to his weapons officer, "have you ever fired our weapons at full capacity?" Rodriguez shook her head. "No, sir. We've only run training exercises at reduced power levels." The captain walked back to his command chair and sat down. He looked around at his crew one more time, making sure everyone was ready for what was about to happen. The approaching enemy ships were almost within weapon range now. "All stations, this is the captain," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for combat operations. Remove all safety restrictions and bring all systems to full operational status. This is not a drill." Throughout the ship, crew members began activating systems that had been running at minimal power. Warning lights flashed as computers removed the safety limits that normally prevented the ship's systems from reaching dangerous levels. Hayes looked at her console as new readings appeared. "Captain, I'm seeing power levels I've never seen before." Clark was grinning now as he watched his engines respond to the removal of their restrictions. "Sir, we're drawing power from the quantum core at levels that would normally trigger automatic shutdowns." The Zephyrian ships were now close enough to begin their attack, their weapon systems locked onto the human ship and prepared to fire. Admiral Vextar watched from his flagship, expecting to see the human vessel destroyed in the first few seconds of combat. Instead, something happened that would change everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about humans and war. The moment Captain Morrison gave the order to remove safety restrictions, the UES Defiant transformed from what appeared to be a modest warship into something the Zephyrians had never encountered before. Throughout the ship, systems that had been quietly humming at low power levels suddenly roared to life with the sound of barely controlled energy. Chief Engineer Bobby Clark watched his displays with growing excitement as power readings climbed far beyond what any alien species would consider safe operating levels. The ship's main reactor, which had been running at what most civilizations would call full power, was actually operating at less than 15% of its true capacity. Human engineering philosophy was simple: build everything to withstand far more stress than it would ever normally face, then build it stronger just to be sure. Dr. Rachel Kim, the ship's physicist, monitored the quantum drive from her station in the lower decks. The drive itself was humanity's greatest achievement in space travel technology. Instead of simply bending space like most alien faster-than-light systems, human quantum drives actually contained miniature black holes, using their gravitational fields to tear holes in reality itself. Navigation Officer Steve Cooper sat at his station watching as the ship's artificial intelligence system, which they called Oracle, began calculating attack patterns. The AI could process millions of possible combat scenarios in seconds, something that would take organic minds hours or days to accomplish. But Oracle was more than just a computer. It was connected to every system on the ship and could control them all simultaneously. The 12 approaching Zephyrian ships suddenly detected massive energy spikes coming from the human vessel. Their sensors, which had been reading the Defiant as a minor threat, now showed power signatures that were larger than their entire squadron combined. The alien crew stared at their displays in confusion, wondering if their equipment was malfunctioning. Admiral Vextar received the sensor reports from his attacking squadron and felt his first moment of real concern. "What do you mean, the power? Readings have increased by 3,000%? He demanded of his sensor officer. Before anyone could answer his question, the human ship simply disappeared from all sensors. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. The 12 Zephyrian ships found themselves alone in empty space. Their target completely vanished. The UES Defiant had not been destroyed or even damaged. Instead, it had activated its quantum displacement system, a technology that allowed human ships to move through folded space-time. In the span of 3 seconds, the Defiant appeared in multiple locations around the Zephyrian squadron, moving faster than their sensors could track. The alien crews panicked as their ship's computers tried to lock onto the human vessel, only to have it disappear and reappear somewhere else. The Defiant seemed to be in several places at once, above them, below them, behind them, and beside them all at the same time. Weapons Officer Amy Rodriguez activated the ship's primary weapon systems for the first time since leaving Earth. Human weapons were not designed to disable or capture enemy ships. They were built to eliminate threats completely and permanently. The first weapon she fired was called a quantum disruptor, a device that broke apart the atomic bonds holding matter together. The quantum disruptor beam hit the lead Zephyrian ship and simply erased its shields as if they had never existed. The alien crew had seconds to realize their defenses were gone before the beam reached their hull and began tearing their ship apart at the molecular level. Rodriguez's second weapon was a gravitational pulse cannon that created a brief but intense gravitational field around the target. 3 Zephyrian ships found themselves crushed into metal spheres as the artificial gravity field compressed them beyond their structural limits. The most devastating weapon in the human arsenal was something called an entropic lance. This device did not just destroy its targets, it made them cease to exist entirely. The weapon fired a beam that increased the entropy of whatever it touched to maximum levels instantly. 2 Zephyrian ships were hit by the entropic lance and simply vanished from reality, leaving no debris, no energy signature, nothing at all. The remaining alien ships tried to fight back, firing every weapon they had at the human vessel. Their plasma cannons and missile systems targeted the Defiant with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But the human ship's defensive systems were as advanced as its weapons. The Defiant's shields were not simple energy barriers like those used by most alien species. Human shields were multi-layered systems that included energy deflection, matter displacement, and even temporal distortion fields. The Zephyrian weapons struck the shields and were either absorbed, redirected, or displaced into alternate dimensions. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes monitored the battle from her station, watching as their weapons eliminated the enemy ships with terrifying efficiency. Captain, 11 enemy vessels destroyed. 1 remaining ship is trying to retreat. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the last Zephyrian ship attempting to flee back to the main fleet. Let it go, he ordered. They need to report what they saw here. The entire engagement had lasted exactly 28 seconds. 12 advanced alien warships, each carrying crews of over 200 warriors, had been eliminated by a single human vessel that appeared to have taken no damage at all. Steve Cooper reported that the quantum drive was ready for additional combat operations. Sir, all systems are operating normally. We used less than 2% of our available power during that engagement. Dr. Kim confirmed that the black hole containment system was stable and ready for extended operations. The miniature black hole that powered their ship could provide energy for months of continuous combat without needing to be recharged. The surviving Zephyrian ship reached the main fleet and immediately began transmitting sensor data from the battle. Admiral Vexitar stared at the reports in disbelief. His sensors showed that the human ship had moved in ways that should have been physically impossible and used weapons that operated on principles his scientists did not understand. How many human ships are there? The Admiral demanded of his intelligence officers. Sir, our sensors still show only 1 vessel, came the reply. Vexitar studied the tactical display, trying to understand what had just happened. His most advanced ships, vessels that had conquered entire star systems, had been destroyed in less than 30 seconds by what appeared to be a single human warship. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. Admiral, Vexitar, I believe your scouts gave you incomplete information about humanity. We are not the primitive species you were expecting. You still have time to leave peacefully. The Zephyrian commander felt anger rising in his chest. His pride and military training demanded that he respond to this insult with overwhelming force. No single ship, regardless of its technology, could stand against his entire fleet. All ships, Vexitar commanded over his fleet communications. Battle Groups 3 and 7 will advance and destroy the human vessel. Use maximum firepower. 60 of his largest and most powerful ships began moving toward the Defiant. Each vessel was a match for anything in his fleet, and together they carried enough weapons to sterilize an entire planet. Surely even the most advanced technology could not stand against such numbers. But as the Zephyrian battle groups approached the human ship, Captain Morrison was preparing to show them something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The first engagement had been a demonstration. Now they would see what human military technology could really do when the safety restrictions were completely removed. Admiral Vextar watched 60 of his most powerful warships advance toward the single human vessel, confident that sheer numbers would overcome whatever strange technology the humans possessed. Each of these ships was a battle-tested veteran of multiple campaigns, crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. Their combined firepower could reduce entire cities to ash within minutes. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Captain Morrison observed the approaching alien formation with calm interest. The Zephyrians were using standard fleet tactics, arranging their ships in overlapping fields of fire that would make it impossible for any enemy to escape their combined assault. It was exactly what he had expected from a species that relied on overwhelming force. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes reported the enemy movement. Captain, 60 vessels approaching in attack formation. They'll be in weapons range in 3 minutes. Chief, Medical Officer Patricia Lee announced over the ship's communication system that all crew members were secured for high-acceleration maneuvers. Communications Officer Danny Walsh monitored the alien fleet's transmissions, noting the confidence in their voices as they coordinated their attack. Morrison stood and walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the approaching enemy fleet. "Lisa," he said quietly, "show them what we really are." Hayes nodded and began entering commands into her console. Throughout the ship, systems that had been hidden behind false bulkheads began to activate. The Defiant's hull began to shift and change as sections moved into new positions. What the aliens had thought was a single ship revealed itself to be something entirely different. The Defiant was not just a warship but a modular combat platform, designed to reconfigure itself based on the tactical situation. Sections of the hull separated and repositioned themselves, each segment revealing advanced weapon arrays that had been concealed during normal operations. The ship's AI, Oracle, announced in its calm mechanical voice, "Dimensional anchor deployed. Quantum field generators online. Initiating temporal combat protocols." Dr. Rachel Kim monitored the quantum systems as they reached power levels that would have been considered impossible by most alien scientists. The ship was now drawing energy directly from multiple dimensions simultaneously, accessing power sources that existed outside normal space-time. The Zephyrian fleet's sensors registered the changes in the human vessel with growing alarm. What had appeared to be a ship roughly 500 meters long now stretched across nearly 2 kilometers of space. Energy readings showed power signatures that exceeded anything in their databases. But the true shock came when their sensors detected something that their science said was impossible. The human ship was not just fighting in 3 dimensions of normal space. It was somehow operating across multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Weapons Officer Amy Rodriguez activated the ship's advanced combat systems. "Captain, all temporal weapons are online. Multidimensional targeting is locked on all enemy vessels." The first weapons Rodriguez fired were called chronotorpedoes. These devices did not travel through normal space to reach their targets. Instead, they fired backwards through time, striking enemy ships several seconds before the weapons were actually activated. The Zephyrian crews watched in terror as their ships exploded before the human vessel had even appeared to fire. 8 alien ships were destroyed by weapons that hit them from the past. Their crews died without ever understanding how they had been attacked by something that had not yet happened. The next weapons Rodriguez used were quantum mines that existed in parallel dimensions. These devices remained invisible and harmless until enemy ships occupied the same space coordinates in normal reality. Then they would phase into existence just long enough to detonate with the force of small stars. 12 more Zephyrian ships vanished in brilliant flashes of light as the dimensional mines materialized inside their hulls and exploded. The remaining alien crews could not even see what was destroying their vessels. Navigation Officer Steve Cooper engaged the ship's multi-dimensional movement system. The Defiant began moving through folded spacetime, appearing at multiple locations simultaneously. From the Zephyrian perspective, they were being attacked by dozens of human ships, each one appearing and disappearing faster than their weapons could track. Oracle began analyzing each alien vessel in the approaching fleet, identifying weak points in their armor and shields. The AI could process the structural data of all 60 ships simultaneously and calculate the most efficient way to destroy each one. Chief Engineer Bobby Clark monitored the massive power draw as their systems operated, at levels that would have overloaded any alien vessel. Captain, we're running at about 30% capacity. All systems are stable. The Zephyrian battle groups tried to fight back, firing everything they had at the human ship. Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles, and gravity weapons all targeted the Defiant with enough combined firepower to crack a planet in half. But the human ship's defenses were operating on principles the aliens could not understand. Some of their weapons were deflected by shields that existed in different dimensions. Others were absorbed by temporal barriers that sent the energy into the past or future. Still others simply missed as the Defiant moved through space-time in ways that made normal targeting impossible. Rodriguez continued her systematic destruction of the enemy fleet. Entropic lances erased ships from reality. Quantum disruptors tore vessels apart at the atomic level. Gravitational pulse cannons crushed hulls into dense metal spheres. Each weapon was more devastating than anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Hayes reported the enemy casualties. 47 vessels destroyed, Captain. 13 ships remaining and attempting to retreat. Morrison watched the surviving alien ships flee back toward their main fleet. The entire engagement had lasted less than 2 minutes, and his ship had eliminated nearly 50 advanced warships while taking no damage at all. But more importantly, Oracle had been scanning and analyzing the entire Zephyrian fleet during the battle. The AI now had detailed information about every ship class, weapon system, and defensive capability in the alien armada. "Sir," Oracle announced, "tactical analysis of the remaining enemy fleet is complete. I have identified optimal attack patterns for all vessel types. Estimated time to eliminate entire fleet, 4 minutes 37 seconds. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display as the surviving ships from his battle groups limped back to the main fleet. Over 3/4 of his attack force had been destroyed in less time than it took to heat a meal. His most experienced crews, his most powerful ships, eliminated by a single human vessel. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his science officers. "No single ship can have that much power." His chief scientist, an elderly Zephyrian with silver-tinted scales, looked up from his instruments with fear in his eyes. "Admiral, I don't think we're dealing with normal technology. Their ship appears to be operating outside the normal laws of physics." Vextar accessed his personal files, searching for any additional information about humanity that might explain what he was witnessing. What he found in the deepest intelligence archives filled him with a cold terror, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The files revealed that humanity had not slowly developed into a spacefaring civilization like most species. They had been forced into space when their homeworld was destroyed in an experimental accident. The survivors had faced extinction among the stars, and that crucible had forged them into something unprecedented in galactic history. Captain Morrison opened another communication channel to the alien fleet. "Admiral, I can see you're beginning to understand your situation, but you should know that reinforcements are on the way." Even as he spoke, long-range sensors detected new contacts approaching the system from 3 different directions. But these were not just ships. These were entire human battle fleets, and each vessel in those fleets radiated the same terrifying energy signatures as the Defiant. Admiral Vextar felt his blood turn cold as his long-range sensors detected the approaching human reinforcements. 3 separate fleets were converging on the system, each one consisting of vessels that individually outclassed his flagship. The energy signatures from these ships made his entire armada looked like a collection of primitive shuttlecraft. The Zephyrian commander accessed the deepest levels of his intelligence database, desperate to find any information that might help him understand what his fleet was facing. What he discovered in those classified files was worse than his darkest fears. Humanity had not developed into a spacefaring civilization through the normal process of gradual exploration and expansion. Instead, they had been thrown into space by the complete destruction of their homeworld. Earth had been lost in an experimental accident involving artificial black hole creation, scattering the survivors across dozens of colony ships. Those refugees had faced extinction in the cold vacuum of space, with limited resources and no safe haven. That terrible crucible had forged them into something that had never existed before in galactic history. A species that developed every piece of technology with one simple goal in mind: survival against impossible odds. Every human ship was built to operate far beyond what other species would consider safe limits because humans had learned to push every system to its absolute breaking point when facing death. Their weapons were designed to eliminate threats completely and permanently because they could never afford to leave enemies alive to attack again later. Their defensive systems assumed they would always face overwhelming numbers because that had been their reality for generations. Their tactics were based on the principle that every battle might be their last, so they fought with a desperate efficiency that no other species could match. Captain Morrison sensed the alien commander's growing understanding and opened another communication channel. "Admiral Vextar, you're starting to realize the mistake you've made. Humans don't fight wars the way other species do. We don't seek conquest or glory. We fight because we have to, and we've become very good at it." On the Defiance Bridge, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes reported the status of the incoming reinforcements. "Captain, First Fleet will arrive in 47 minutes. Second and Third Fleets are 2 hours behind them." Intelligence Officer Martin. Cole had been monitoring alien communications throughout the system. "Sir, I'm detecting transmissions from at least 3 other alien species. It appears the Zephyrians have called for assistance from their allied races." Instead of showing concern about facing even more enemies, Captain Morrison actually smiled. "Bobby, how's our power core holding up after those 2 engagements?" Chief Engineer Bobby Clark checked his displays and grinned. "Sir, we're still running at only about 32% of full capacity. We could maintain this level of operations for approximately 6 months without refueling." Morrison nodded and activated the ship's deep space communications array. "Oracle, send a priority message to Earth Fleet Command. Inform them that we have a situation requiring a demonstration of human resolve. Request immediate deployment of additional battle groups." The artificial intelligence processed the request instantly. "Message transmitted, Captain. Response received. Admiral Ross reports that additional fleets are already en route. Estimated arrival time, 18 hours. Meanwhile, Admiral Vextar was discovering more disturbing information about humanity in his intelligence files. The reports described a species that had never lost a war, not because they were naturally aggressive, but because they simply could not afford to lose. Every conflict they had ever faced was a matter of species survival. Other alien civilizations had tried to test human resolve in the past. The files contained reports of entire battle fleets that had simply vanished after challenging human territory. No wreckage was ever found, no survivors ever located. They had simply ceased to exist. The most chilling entry in the files described humanity's approach to warfare as the final solution. When humans identified a threat to their survival, they did not seek to defeat it or negotiate with it. They eliminated it completely, ensuring that it could never threaten them again. Dr. Rachel Kim monitored the quantum systems as the ship maintained its enhanced operational status. The miniature black holes that powered human vessels were themselves a testament to their approach to survival. Only a species facing extinction would risk containing such dangerous forces within their ships. Weapons Officer Amy Rodriguez ran diagnostics on their weapon systems, ensuring everything was ready for the larger battle that was coming. Human weapons were not just tools of war but instruments of absolute destruction. The entropic lances could erase matter from existence. The quantum disruptors could tear apart atomic bonds. The temporal weapons could kill enemies before they were even fired. Navigation Officer Steve Cooper tracked the movements of enemy reinforcements as they entered the system. Ships from the Hegemony Alliance, the Crystal Collective, and the Machine Syndicate were joining the Zephyrian fleet. Together, they numbered over 800 vessels, but Cooper also tracked the approaching human reinforcements. Admiral Catherine Ross commanded the first fleet from her flagship, the UES Retribution. Admiral Frank Turner led the second fleet aboard the UES Vengeance. The third fleet followed Admiral Helen Carter on the UES Reckoning. The names of human warships told their own story about human military philosophy. They were not called things like peace or harmony or prosperity. They had names like Retribution, Vengeance, Reckoning, Defiance, and Fury. These were ships built by a species that understood that sometimes peace could only be achieved through the complete defeat of those who threatened it. Communications Officer Danny Walsh intercepted transmissions between the various alien fleets as they attempted to coordinate their response to the human presence. The aliens were struggling to understand how such a small number of human ships could pose a threat to their combined armada. "Sir," Walsh reported, "the enemy fleets are having difficulty with their coordination. They're used to fighting weaker opponents and don't have experience working together against a peer-level threat." Morrison walked to the main view screen and looked out at the growing collection of alien vessels. Hundreds of ships from multiple species, all united in their belief that they could overwhelm the humans through sheer numbers. "Oracle," the captain said, "begin detailed scans of all enemy vessels. I want tactical profiles on every ship class represented in that fleet." The AI immediately began its analysis, using sensors that could penetrate most alien shielding and armor to map the internal structure of enemy vessels. Within minutes, Oracle had identified the weak points, weapon systems, and crew complements of every ship in the combined alien armada. Chief Medical Officer Patricia Lee made an announcement over the ship's communication system. "All personnel, prepare for extended combat operations. Medical teams are standing by." But the crew of the Defiant was not afraid. They had trained for situations like this, scenarios where they might face overwhelming odds with limited support. Every human in space carried the genetic memory of their species' brush with extinction, and that memory drove them to fight with a determination that no other species could understand. Admiral Vextar received reports from his allied fleets as they took positions around the human vessels. His science officers were analyzing the energy readings from the human ships and reporting power levels that seemed impossible. "Admiral," his chief scientist reported, "the human vessels are generating more energy than our entire combined fleet. I don't understand how their reactors can produce such massive power outputs." Vextar stared at the tactical display, watching as the human reinforcements took positions around his much larger fleet. Only 97 human ships faced over 800 alien vessels, but somehow the aliens were the ones who felt trapped. The Zephyrian admiral finally understood that he had made a terrible mistake. He had not just attacked a human colony, he had threatened the survival of a species that had learned to treat any threat to their existence as a fight to the death. And they were very, very good at that kind of fighting. As the three human battle fleets took their positions around the massive alien armada, the tactical situation became clear to everyone involved. Over 800 alien vessels from 4 different species faced 97 human warships. By any normal measure of military strength, the aliens should have held an overwhelming advantage. But space around New Haven crackled with energy signatures that told a different story. Each human vessel radiated power readings that exceeded anything in the alien databases. The combined energy output of the human fleets was greater than that of some stars. Admiral Catherine Ross commanded the first fleet from her flagship, the UES Retribution. Her voice came over the communications channel with the cold authority of someone who had fought in dozens of battles and never lost one. "This is Admiral Ross of the Terran Defense Force. You have attacked human territory and threatened human civilians. You have committed acts of war against the United Earth systems. You have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally, and submit to human authority for judgment. Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. True fear. Not just concern about losing a battle, but terror at what defeat might mean for his entire civilization. His intelligence networks were now providing additional information about humanity that his initial scouts had either missed or been too frightened to report. Throughout the galaxy, other species spoke of humans in whispers, describing them not as conquerors but as something far more frightening. Humans were known for what other species called the human solution. When they identified a threat to their survival, they did not accept surrender or negotiate terms. They eliminated the threat completely and permanently, ensuring it could never threaten them again. The files contained reports from other alien civilizations about their encounters with human military forces. Species that had tried to raid human colonies had simply vanished. Entire battle fleets had been erased from existence without leaving any trace of wreckage or survivors. But the most terrifying aspect of human warfare was not their technology or their tactics. It was their complete lack of mercy when facing what they perceived as an existential threat. Other species fought for territory, resources, or political advantage. Humans fought for survival, and they approached every battle with the understanding that their species' continued existence might depend on the outcome. Admiral Frank Turner's voice joined the communication from his flagship, the UES Vengeance. Admiral Vextar, you have 30 seconds to begin powering down your weapons and shields. Any delay will be interpreted as continued hostile intent. The Zephyrian commander looked around his bridge at officers who had served with him through multiple successful campaigns. These were experienced warriors who had never known defeat, but he could see fear in their eyes now. Sir, his tactical officer reported, our allied fleets are requesting orders. The Hegemony Alliance commander wants to know if we should attempt a coordinated attack. Vexatar stared at the tactical display showing the human fleet positions. The humans had arranged their ships in a formation that seemed almost casual, as if they were not concerned about facing such overwhelming numbers. Captain Morrison, still aboard the UES Defiant, monitored the alien communications as the enemy. Commanders debated their options. Intelligence Officer Martin Cole reported that several of the alien species were beginning to question the wisdom of continuing the engagement. Sir, I'm detecting significant disagreement among the enemy fleets. The Machine Syndicate vessels are already beginning to withdraw from the formation. Weapons Officer Amy Rodriguez kept her targeting systems locked on multiple enemy vessels, ready to begin the systematic destruction of the alien armada if ordered. Captain, I have firing solutions on all priority targets. We could eliminate their command ships within the first 10 seconds of engagement. But Morrison was hoping the aliens would choose surrender over destruction. Human military doctrine preferred to avoid unnecessary casualties when possible, even among enemies. Hold fire unless they make an aggressive move, he ordered. Admiral. Helen Carter's voice came from the UES Reckoning as the Third Fleet completed its deployment. All human vessels, this is Admiral Carter. Maintain defensive positions but be ready for immediate engagement if hostilities resume. The human fleet. Commanders had fought together before and moved with the coordination of a single organism. Their ship's artificial intelligence systems were networked together, allowing them to share tactical information and coordinate their actions with perfect efficiency. Admiral Vextar realized that his moment of decision had arrived. He could order his fleet to attack, knowing that they would face weapons and technology beyond their understanding. Or he could do something that no Zephyrian commander had ever done in their species' military history. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered his communications officer. The channel opened, and for a moment Vexatar hesitated. The words he was about to speak would mark the end of his military career and possibly his life. But they might also save the lives of his crews and prevent a war that could destroy his entire civilization. Admiral Ross, he began, his voice shaking despite his efforts to remain composed. I formally request terms for the surrender of all Allied forces under my command. The words hung in space like a physical presence. On ships throughout the alien armada, crews stared at their communication systems in shock. In over 200 years of Zephyrian expansion, No admiral had ever surrendered an intact fleet. But Vextar was not finished. The intelligence files had made it clear that humans respected strength, but showed mercy only to those who acknowledged their mistake completely. "We recognize the superiority of human military forces," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "We acknowledge that we made a grave error in threatening human territory. We beg for mercy and ask only that our crews be allowed to live." It was a phrase that had never been spoken in Zephyrian military history. Beg for mercy. The response from Admiral Ross was immediate and precise. "Admiral Vextar, your surrender is accepted. All alien vessels will power down weapons and shields immediately. You will provide complete access to your intelligence databases regarding any other species that might threaten human space. You will establish buffer zones around human territory and ensure that no hostile forces approach our colonies. Most importantly," she continued, "you will spread word of this engagement throughout the galaxy. Other species need to understand the consequences of threatening human civilians." Captain Morrison watched from the Defiant as the massive alien fleet began powering down their weapon systems. Ships that had arrived ready for conquest were now preparing for surrender and withdrawal under human escort. The engagement that had begun with over 300 alien ships attacking a single human vessel was ending with the largest fleet surrender in galactic history. Communications Officer Danny Walsh reported increasing diplomatic traffic from across the galaxy as word of the battle spread. "Sir, we're receiving transmission requests from over 50 different alien governments. They all want to establish immediate diplomatic relations with Earth." Chief Engineer Bobby Clark ran final diagnostics on their systems as they prepared to return to normal operations. "Captain, all systems performed perfectly. No damage, no overheating, no equipment failures." As the alien fleets began their withdrawal, under human escort, Admiral Vextar sent a final message to his home command. "Do not engage the humans under any circumstances. They are not like other species we have encountered. They do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for survival, and they are better at it than we ever imagined." The story concluded with the human fleets resuming their normal patrol duties, the engagement already becoming another entry in the growing legend of human military capability. Throughout the galaxy, other species took careful note of what had happened to the mighty Zephyrian Empire. Within days of the battle, dozens of alien civilizations opened diplomatic channels with Earth, offering trade agreements and non-aggression pacts. The message was clear. Humanity had proven once again that sometimes the best way to ensure peace was to demonstrate the terrible cost of war. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking out at the peaceful stars around New Haven. The colony was safe, the threat was ended, and the galaxy had learned another important lesson about the species that had survived the destruction of their homeworld and emerged stronger than ever.